Hi everyone, my name is Asta Manot and welcome to the second video for Module 2 of my Girl Scout Gold Award curriculum Eco Expressions. Last time we learned about the four major components of an ecosystem on Earth. We learned about the air, water, land, and biodiversity. We also discussed the environmental issues we are facing with each of these components and that make up our environment. In this section, we'll be going more in depth and seeing how these issues are impacting places and people around the world and what their implications are, and what steps are being taken to combat these issues. So let's jump right in. So we'll be talking about the challenges that are faced around the world with environmental issues. Like we discussed in the last video, air pollution is one of the deadliest environmental problems, causing millions of premature deaths each year. Industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, and even natural wildfires, like the ones we saw in LA a few months ago, contribute to poor air quality, harming human health and the planet. So I'm sure you guys remember a few months ago when we had the LA fires that people around everybody was told to stay inside, and you guys couldn't go out to play for recess and lunch because the air quality was so bad. That's because of air pollution. So the place we'll be studying for air pollution is Delhi in India. It consistently ranks among the world's most populated cities. So I'm sure you guys know that now India has the largest population in the world, and Delhi, a lot of it is concentrated in Delhi. It's in the capital of the in Delhi. So, major pollution events often created a smog apocalypse during the winter in Delhi. So people had to wear masks, and there was a lot of issues with the poor air quality there, especially in the winter time. So there was smog, and here's a picture of what it looked like, all the air pollution. So the air in Delhi can sometimes be worse than smoking a dozen of cigarettes a day. So just being outside in that air quality is worse than smoking that much. And so what are the causes of this very bad air pollution in this city? Crop burning in neighboring states. Some of the neighboring states in Delhi from Delhi are Punjab and Haryana, and they have this practice called crop burning. So after the year's harvest, all of the remaining crop like remnants like the leaves and stuff are all burnt. So the land is like cleared for the next season of harvest. So people get rid of all of these remnants of crops by burning them. So that's a big contributor to the immense smog and air pollution in Delhi. Moreover, since a lot of India's population is concentrated in the city, there's a lot of vehicles and which emit a lot of particles that are bad for the air quality. There's almost more than 11 million vehicles in just one city. Furthermore, there's industrial pollution and coal-fired power plants that provide energy to the city, which also release a lot of pollution or like air particles that are harmful for us. And then there's also, since there's such a huge population again, and there's a lot of construction that goes on to build like houses and commercial areas for in the city. So that causes a lot of dust. And there's a lot of unpaved roads too, which also results in a lot of dust in the city, contributing to the poor air quality. So what are the impacts of having this bad air pollution? There's a severe health risks from um breathing in this kind of air. There's increased chances of asthma, lung diseases, and heart conditions. Moreover, schools and offices are closed during the peak of the pollution, so people cannot be outside breathing that air. Flights are delayed or canceled due to the low visibility and economic losses in tourism and healthcare costs. So there's people avoid touring or going to this city during the peak of pollution because they don't want to be breathing that kind of air. So in response to In response to the immense air pollution in Delhi, they've implemented some policies that are working to some extent, but however, it's still a very big problem in India right now. So first is the odd even vehicle policy to reduce traffic emissions. What this policy is number plates that end with even numbers and odd numbers, they are only allowed to be seen around the city or like be allowed to be used on certain days. So number plates that start or I think it's start or end with an odd or even odd number are only allowed to be in the streets on certain days, whereas if it's an even number, then they're only allowed to be on the streets on certain days. So this helps reduce the amount of cars that are emitting pollution and are contributing to air pollution. And it like encourages people to get carpools or use public transport. Moreover, they're putting regulations on crop burning and banning it in certain parts, promoting alternative farming methods to get rid of all the remnants of the plants. This installation of air purifiers and an encouraging mask usage to protect the health of their citizens, and then promoting public transportation and electrical vehicles that like don't contribute to the air pollution as much as normal vehicles do. So that's how they're working to combat the issue of air pollution in Delhi. So what are some other countries doing to combat air pollution? So London also has this issue, and not to the extent Delhi does, but London also is expanding its electrical bus fleet to reduce emissions. So it's encouraging more people to use public transport to get around, and they have electrical buses, which also reduce emissions. And then China has cracked down on industrial pollution and planted millions of trees to offset their carbon dioxide emissions. Since there's so much industry and production that happens in China, they also release a lot of bad chemicals into the air. And so they're trying to offset that by planting many trees that can take in that carbon dioxide that contributes to air pollution and climate change. Because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas which traps heat into our planet, which causes climate change. So that's what China is doing to combat this issue. Next, we're going to talk about water. But this is a case study in Cape Town, Africa, about water shortage. Water is essential for life, yet billions of people face water shortages. Water pollution also threatens freshwater sources, making them unsafe to drink or harming the ecosystem. So let's look at this example of a city that nearly ran out of water. In 2018, Cape Town, which is in Africa, faced day zero. The day when the municipal water supplies were to run dry. Years of drought, climate change, and high water usage led to this extreme rationing, and people were limited to only 50 liters of water per day. So, to put this into perspective, an average American uses around 300 million liters of water a day. However, in Cape Town, they only were limited to 50. That's a sixth of the amount of water a normal American uses in a day. Fortunately, conservation efforts and rainfall prevented this complete disaster, but it was a wake-up call for cities worldwide. So they were so close to running out of water, however, they didn't, but it was predicted to be on April 12th of 2018. So what caused this to occur, like to be so close to day zero? First was prolonged drought as a result of climate change and poor water management and overconsumption. So, Cape Town is in Africa, and they didn't receive as much rain as they had anticipated, which resulted in like them not being able to manage their water properly, and there's a humongous drought there. And there's a lot of implications of climate change as well, because of the changing climate, they weren't able to which was a result of the lack of rainfall. So what were the impacts of this day? Strict water rationing. So there was only 50 liters of water per person per day. economic slowdown due to the water shortages in agriculture and tourism. So there wasn't as much economic like they were drowning economically because of the water shortages and then in agriculture, so they weren't able to provide enough water for agriculture to grow food and to export that food. And then tourism, lots of people wanted to come to Cape Town to see it because they were afraid of running out of water. And then increased social tension as inequality affected access to water. So certain groups had more access to water because of maybe their social status or their class how much like they were like how much money they had and they were able to afford buying more water than the rest. And this caused a lot of social tension because of the low amounts of water. So what did the Cape Town do to combat this issue? There's a lot of public awareness campaigns. So like telling people, like showing people how to save water and tips they can like implement. And then the Think Water initiative. Then there was also restrictions on non-essential use of water. So people were like restricted car washing or lawn watering. Like this wasn't as essential as like providing water for the people in the city. So these were secondary. So there was restrictions on how much water could be used for that, or if any. And then they also worked on building a desalination plants and tapping into groundwater. So desalination plants are when you use ocean water or salt water, and then you can desalinize it to make it fresh water that can be drinkable and usable. And then tapping into groundwater, they wanted to see like if they could like build the infrastructure to get groundwater, like water that's underground, that's stored underground. So here's a video about Cape Town's Day Zero and how it impacted people and what they were doing to fight it.
An unprecedented socio-ecological crisis. Never before in the history of the modern world has a whole city of this kind threatened to run out of water for its citizens completely. Cape Town residents have been told not to use more than 60 litres of water a day. That sounds like a lot. The water you use in your short morning shower is now literally all you have for the entire day in terms of daily bathroom routine. If it's yellow, let it mellow. And, well, here is also if it's brown, let it mellow. Exactly. And for showering, the water goes into buckets and is used for something else. Hand washing is anyway out. We're now in most bathrooms seeing hand sanitizers. Cape Town authorities are threatening to fine residents who exceed the daily usage allowance up to 10,000 rand.
I spoke to a girl from Kenya and she was saying to me, I heard in your country you use fresh water for your toilets. And she started laughing. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, we do that. That makes no sense at all.
Last week, our water was cut off by 11 a.m. So we've been forced to go to the Newland Spring to get water.
Last year in 2017, we had a third year of below normal rainfall that was unprecedented. It's hard to attribute specific events to climate change, but an increase in extreme events like drought is what we are expecting from climate change.
A lot of the blame made by politicians is to the public, saying that they're wasteful of resources.
For us, it's a shame for the city to say it's a water crisis because most of us, especially in the black townships, we get a lot of people that must fetch water 15 k's away from their houses. We've been living in the day zero for many years, you see.
I need water at home desperately because my mom, actually, she's on the age where she wets herself. I must wash her thrice. And then how am I going to survive?
It's very much worrying because we also rely on the tourists coming in and all that. How can we provide them with good quality hospitality and also good food when all of this is happening?
We got like 50 liters that we can use. There's also per day.
Definitely don't use as much water as back at home.
At the best of times, we should be saving water, and we don't. The solutions that are at hand are kind of engineering solutions. Desalination plants, which haven't yet been built. There is sufficient underground water in this region to help resolve the problem. The restrictions are not really geared to restrict the agricultural community, although that could happen in future. We probably will continue to consume South African wines, but the question is, will the South African people be able to consume water out of taps?
In this case, it's not just the poor who are suffering, it's also the rich who are suffering will have to change their behavior. So maybe you could consider this a note from your future. What's happening in Cape Town now might soon happen to all of us in relationship to water, to energy, to air. We need to start solving these problems. We need to manage our resources more rationally and collectively, because otherwise it'll be day zero for all these central resources.
So like you said, it's really important to understand what led to these issues so we can avoid having day zeros around the world. Like we don't have to face or have to like go into the circumstances that Cape Town had to on their when they were approaching day zero. So what are some other solutions that other countries are using for to combat the issue of water shortage and water pollution? So first of all, there's Africa, which is they have implemented this technology called the LifeStraw filters, which you can like drink water from, and it filters out all of the toxins and pollution in the water, so you can they can access fresh water through their straws. And it provides this provides clean water in remote areas. And then there's India, which is using rainwater harvesting to help collect and store water. So during monsoon season in India, which is around summertime for us, like around July, August time, there's a lot of rain that happens in India. So in order to combat water shortage, they harvest rainwater, so they like store it in tanks like this, and so they can use it for the future. And in Israel, a leader in desalination, turning seawater into drinkable water, which we discussed earlier, which is also a very cool technology that requires a lot of it's hard to implement because it requires a lot of economical resources and infrastructure. However, if people are able to implement it, it could be life-changing in certain areas.